This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
We bring you the latest in the war on coronavirus as British Prime Minister leaves hospital. A Kenyan university unveils a prototype for ventilators as demand soars for medical equipment. And avoiding COVID-19, Ugandans invent automatic hand washing machine to reduce contact and save water. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this half hour. Easter Sunday in isolation, how some worshippers mark the day amid lockdowns. And in your sport, we delve into the effect the coronavirus pandemic has had on South African football. Let's begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a second Ebola-related death has been recorded. The country had previously gone 52 days without registering any new cases. The first death was confirmed on Friday, just 2 days before the World Health Organization was set to declare the outbreak as over. CGTN's Chris Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
A World Health Organization official in the DRC says the second Ebola death occurred in the Eastern Territory of Beni. The victim was an 11-month-old girl. She's reported to have received treatment at the same health center where a 26-year-old man who tested positive for Ebola on Friday was. Health experts are still trying to find out how the man got the disease. They say he had no known contacts of other Ebola patients and was not a survivor who could have relapsed. The WHO has identified 215 people who came into contact with him before he died. The new cases are a big setback to the DRC that was expecting to declare the outbreak over. More than 2,200 people have died of Ebola since it was first declared in August 2018. The disease has occurred in an active conflict zone in eastern DRC, which has made it difficult for healthcare workers to contain it. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Well, let's take a look at the global COVID-19 figures. Confirmed cases worldwide are approaching 1.8 million. The global death toll is now 110,000. 412,000 people have recovered. In the U.S., 28,000 new cases have been reported, and its death toll has become the world's highest at more than 20,000. More than 1,800 new deaths have been reported. That's a rate of one death per 47 seconds. Meanwhile, nearly half of all cases are in Europe, with Spain and Italy the worst hit. Iran, the epicenter in the Middle East, has registered more than 71,000 infections. Well, elsewhere in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been discharged from hospital after spending 7 nights being treated for COVID-19. But he won't immediately be returning to work. The United Kingdom has nearly 80,000 cases, with a death toll slightly over 10,000. For the latest, we spoke to our correspondent, Naweed Jabarkal.
A week after he was taken to hospital here in central London, Boris Johnson has been discharged. He won't go back to work. Instead, he'll continue his recovery at Chequers, which is the country residence of the British leader here in the United Kingdom. The 55-year-old had symptoms for 10 days before he was taken to hospital last Sunday. 3 nights he spent in intensive care, which highlights the severity of the condition. Now, Downing Street was very tight-lipped about how he was progressing, putting out daily updates, very, very short updates. So Mr. Johnson himself has taken to Twitter in the past hour or so to thank the NHS. He said, quote, "It could have gone either way and that the NHS had saved his life." Quote, "There was no question about that." Now, partly, obviously, a traumatic experience for Mr. Johnson, but remember, he's also got his political hat on here because the UK government is facing a lot of criticism about its handling of the coronavirus pandemic, particularly with healthcare staff, doctors and nurses on the front line say they don't have enough equipment. And I think that's why Mr. Johnson's put out this 5-minute video essentially to thank the frontline NHS and say that the government is behind them. Frontline staff, doctors and nurses say that they have a shortage of PPE, that's protective personal equipment, things like goggles and masks. The British Medical Association, which represents the industry, came out yesterday saying that some doctors and nurses are now putting their lives at risk. The Health Secretary said that it wasn't really an issue, there was enough to go around. A few hours after that, the Home Secretary or the Interior Minister here in the UK came out apologising essentially. Just one indication of how the government's handling of this has come under criticism. The UK government says it's doing all it can to try and get more supplies, including bringing some in from China. Some hospitals are now taking matters into their own hands, looking at how they can get these supplies. China, obviously one of the biggest producers in the world, so that could be one avenue to explore. But more generally, with regards to Boris Johnson, I think his departure, his absence in the past week or so has left a gaping hole in Downing Street and in the UK government's response. This is a time of national crisis where leadership is needed. So I think all of the members of the government, including his colleagues and ministers, will be hoping that he's back at work soon.
Meanwhile, in Africa, countries are taking measures to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Rising cases on the continent have raised concerns. There are nearly 14,000 cases spread across Africa. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that more than 2,300 people have recovered and at least 740 people have succumbed. Only 2 of the 54 African countries are yet to report a case, Comoros and Lesotho. But some experts say the pandemic appears to be slower on the continent than in other regions. Many think it's because Africa is yet to reach its peak. While this could be true, Africa's capacity to handle the virus remains a concern. Most African countries have weak health systems, with many trying to ramp up testing capabilities. Let's now take a look at the numbers by regions. North Africa has the highest number of infections. Algeria and Egypt are reporting the most cases in the region at nearly 2,000 each. In West Africa, the numbers are growing exponentially as well. Nearly all affected countries have witnessed a rise in infections. In Central Africa, Cameroon has reported the highest number of infections, and the government is making it compulsory to wear a mask in public places. East Africa remains the least affected region. Kenya and Djibouti are reporting the most cases and have been ramping up containment measures. Elsewhere in Southern Africa, South Africa still has the highest recorded number of cases. It is 6 times the number of cases as Mauritius, the second most affected country in the region. Well, global demand has been soaring for ventilators, the machines used to push oxygen into patients whose lungs are failing. And Kenya has a limited number of these. But a group of university students have developed a prototype ventilator, and local production is expected to start soon. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy brings us the story.
Kenya is working around the clock to bolster supplies of ventilators as demand skyrockets due to the coronavirus pandemic. The country's Kenyatta University has come up with a prototype that is expected to go into full production soon.
I want to commend Kenyatta University and particularly those who are involved in one way or another in making this possible. As Kenyans, as leaders, we are very excited and very hopeful. It changes the way we think, the way we rate ourselves.
Kenya, just like many other African countries, is currently facing a surge of patients with breathing difficulties from the coronavirus, which is sparking a hunt for ventilators.
The global pandemic, that is coronavirus, has led to a shortage in supplies of critical medical commodities. Ventilators has been one of them, and this is necessary for those people who become critically ill until they require assistance with breathing.
Ventilators are vital lifelines for critically ill COVID-19 patients that keep them breathing and buys them time to fight the infection and recover. Shortages mean healthcare workers are forced to make big decisions on which lives to save. Daniel Kabuge is among the 16 students behind the invention of the prototype ventilator.
After we saw what is happening in the world, there's a challenge for ventilators and there's a challenge with production of ventilators. We decided we could not sit down and wait at home or quarantine, so we decided to come up with how we can make a ventilator that will support and save lives.
The innovation by Kenyatta University will go a long way in saving the lives of those in critical condition. According to a recent study by the Imperial College London, an estimated 3 in 10 of those infected with COVID-19 and are hospitalized need external support for breathing. Daniel Arab Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
A Chinese woman who works in Tanzania decided to take a COVID-19 rapid test at home when she started coughing and feeling uncomfortable in her lower respiratory tract. She says she did this to avoid cross-infection at the hospital. She recorded the whole process of self-testing. Let's take a look.
Yes, I'm coughing. I've coughed since the last week, and I can feel the pain go all the way down from my throat all the way to lungs. And at the same time, I feel a little bit tired and feel lazy. Since the first case is reported in Tanzania, it has been 3 weeks. And right now I can just stay at home to reduce the chance going out to contact with the others. Sometimes I feel very depressed, especially with this cough. Coincidentally, I've got some rapid test kit which is recommended to test the suspected cases. And even though this is based on the antibody of COVID-19 and need to take several tests to make sure you are virus-free, and if I take a test today, and it still will relieve some of my anxious. Okay, what we are waiting for? Let's just start. Okay, so this is the COVID-19 test kit. So I'm going to use this one to test, and this is from China, and they have very easy way to use it. So only 15 minutes and you will get the result. And this is the positive, this is the negative. Before that, I have already washed my hand, and then we can just open it. This one, after you open it, you would better use it as soon as possible. So here is the kit, and you can see those are the 2 places, and you need to drop the your blood drop, and also the diluent. And firstly, I will just use this wipe and clean my hand. I'm going to use this finger, so I just wipe this finger. And then this is the needle I'm going to use. And with this needle, I just turn it, and then you will see here is the sharp needles. And then with this one, I will punch it on my finger. 1, 2, 3. Ouch. This is the straw. We're gonna use this to transfer the blood. And I think I need more blood. So I think I need more to drop it there. And then with this one, I just drop it here. Drop it here, just in case if I have more. Okay. And then from here, I'm going to use this one. And then I drop this one, maybe 1 drop, 2 drops, 1 drop, 2 drops. And then we just wait. Here is the result, and compare with what we have here. This is definitely, it is negative. And I think what I need to do is I just need to write down the date, and because I know this one you need to test it for several times. And so that's it.
Well, the COVID-19 outbreak has prompted creativity in trying to find ways to deal with the virus. In Uganda, university students have developed an automatic hand washer to promote safe hygiene and save water. TGTN's Leon Sianga brings us more on that story.
This automatic water dispenser is the innovation of 3 students. It was motivated by the increase in use of hand washing points amid the coronavirus outbreak.
One has to put the hands, the machine automatically detects the hands, and it triggers the water to open, our tap to open, and either if someone uses the soap the same way as the water dispenser does, so if you put your hand, it detects the hand, it washes. If you remove the hands, it also detects that the object is not around, it's not available.
The gadget is powered by solar energy. While it is in use now, it still remains a work in progress.
When you look at the system, it is kind of big and it might not be easily operatable due to the tangled wires everywhere. So we think of making this thing portable, smaller.
The students hope to produce more machines. Once complete, they could cost about $25 a piece. The innovators of the hand washing machine say their gadget can be useful in a place like this, where hundreds constantly get in contact, even at a hand washing point. Close proximity has been a major concern for many.
Most of us have been holding on to jerry cans while washing. We could still get the disease.
With the machine, I can wash my hands without holding anything. That way, you cannot spread the disease.
The country's health ministry has advocated for regular hand washing as a measure to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And these students' ingenuity could help save as much water, but also many lives. Leon Sinyanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, Christians in Nigeria have joined their counterparts all over the world to mark the Easter celebrations. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports on how families are celebrating amid a lockdown.
It's not the typical Easter celebration for the Utoros, a Christian family in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. They would usually be ceremonially dressed and join other worshippers in their local church for a celebratory service. Though dressed up for their white-themed service, the Utoros would be joining in virtually from their home. It's a deviation occasioned by the coronavirus shutdown.
It's a 3-day affair. We start on Friday with a Good Friday service in the evening. Saturdays we do food distribution to poor communities, and then on Sunday we'll have our Easter service. It's usually like a grand affair, but this year it's a bit different. The change it's unusual, it's far from the norm, but it is what we have to do to keep the virus from spreading.
The pain points in all this is that it has prevented a gathering of people together, so usually there is some sort of energy, when you gather together to praise God and all that. So, but apart from that, what we've been able to do is to be creative in terms of using digital solutions.
Their pastor, Wale Afelumo, pulls an average attendance of 600 worshippers every Sunday. Since government announced a ban on mass gatherings, he had come up with the best way to keep his congregation connected, leveraging on technology.
For us as a church, it's just the use of internet, reaching out to our members. We started what we call a fingers crossed challenge. We formed the shape of the cross with our fingers, took pictures, and sent across social media platforms so that we still keep the image of the cross, the reason for the season, in the fore of people's minds.
Nigeria has recorded over 300 COVID-19 cases, with 25% recovery and 3% death rates. Authorities continue in the battle against rapid spread of the virus. Although Easter remains a significant celebration, the Christian community here believes the lockdown is in the best interest of all citizens. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, Easter Sunday in South Africa is being celebrated differently in 2020. The country is in its second round of national lockdown. Angela Coppola reports from Hillbrow, South Africa.
So traditionally in South Africa, the Easter celebrations are one of the biggest after Christmas. And what happens generally is there's a big congregation that goes up into Polokwane. They reckon it's sometimes up to as many as 1 million people congregating there over the Easter long weekend. It's a Zionist church, and essentially what they do is they spend the whole weekend together talking about the Bible and all the issues that relate to the Bible and their faith. So that's what's happening traditionally. That's been banned, that's been stopped altogether. In fact, all church celebrations of anything over 50 have been cancelled as well. So many of the churches have gone online. So for people who have bandwidth, who have cell phones, they can connect to go and practice their faith remotely. So that's in terms of the church, in terms of Easter, and in terms of what's happening now. So it's dead quiet, no churches are operational. In terms of adhering to the rules and regulations and the law, well, it depends where you are. If you're in the suburbs, it's going to be a little bit easier because you can stay in your homes, you have a garden that you can work with. If you live in the inner city like here in Hillbrow, it's going to be a lot more challenging. They're very small apartments here. There are people living on top of each other, up to 10 people in a one-bedroom flat. So there's lots of noise, lots of activity, and people are on the streets just to get away a bit. And we're not even talking about what's going on in the townships of Alexander, for example, Tembisa or Soweto on the south. So the people are breaking the rules. Nothing's changed. And in fact, there are more people on the streets now with the announcement of the second lockdown than there were during the first lockdown. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Hillbrow, South Africa.
You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. It's time now for our sport news. The Confederation of African Football has postponed the 2 top continental club competitions until further notice. CGTN's Adele Muruki brings us that report.
On Saturday, the Confederation of African Football has decided to postpone all matches scheduled in May. CAF's emergency committee announced an open-ended delay to the Champions League and the Confederation Cup semi-finals, as well as the Under-17 Women World Cup qualifiers.
We're expecting the postponement could last until mid-June if the coronavirus pandemic gets better. But otherwise, we're expecting further delays for all matches. It is a logical decision. It has huge financial losses, but there's nowhere safe to play football on earth right now.
With CAF's decision this weekend, all African competitions are now officially postponed indefinitely, including the Africa Cup of Nations and World Cup qualifiers.
The situation is not catastrophic yet. In the Champions League and the Confederations Cup, there are only 5 matches remaining that can easily be recovered. Once the coronavirus threat is over, CAF can in 4 weeks catch up and begin the new season.
So far, the situation could be recoverable, but that may not be for long. COVID-19 has not reached its peak yet in most African countries.
It may take the continent several months to recover from the pandemic. Cancelling competitions is not yet an option for CAF, but that might not last for long. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Football leagues around the world have put their seasons on hold until further notice, with the exception of Belgium, where Percy Tau's club Brugge were crowned champions. However, in South Africa, a lot of uncertainty remains as to what happens next. CGTN's CS Duplessis tells us why.
The Premier Soccer League came to an abrupt stop after the PSL chairman Dr. Ivan Khoza's announcement on March 19th, stating that until the green light from the South African government, no football activities would take place, leaving the league's conclusion up in the air and the players in limbo.
In terms of longevity in the game, for sure, the football laws are going to have to be rewritten, and that's probably across all sports. So very uncertain times. We don't know what's happening tomorrow, and we don't know what's going to be happening in the future competitions. We've still got cups to go on in the South African Premier League. We've still got the league to be finished, so very, very interesting times ahead.
Roberts, a former goalkeeper for clubs like Crystal Palace, Mamelodi Sundowns and Ajax Cape Town, has told his players to use the time of lockdown wisely and to improve themselves.
It's a time to sit, it's a time to reflect, it's a time to go within and see where we as individuals can improve ourselves. And I've told the boys as well is that you may not be the most talented of players, but there's nothing stopping you from coming back now to their mini pre-season as the fittest. So I hope they're going to take that on board now and really, really work on themselves going forward.
With European clubs discussing reducing players' wages, Roberts says it's tough for South African clubs who aren't in the financial position of Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns to follow suit.
I think it'll be very tough for players or teams to implement a wage cut going forward because of the coronavirus. I honestly can't see that happening, to be honest. I just don't think the majority of players outside the top 5 or top 6 teams could actually afford it. Nothing's been put in place from the top, from the PSL. There's no savings plan in place for these guys. So now you can't expect them to all of a sudden take wage cuts.
The conclusion of the season remains a big topic of debate, but so is the idea of matches behind closed doors, a scenario that is not ideal, especially for the football fans who flock to stadiums week in and week out.
We don't want the games to be played behind closed doors because there's just no game feel. The sponsors won't be getting their bang for the buck. The players won't feel like they're playing for, anything worthwhile, if that's fair to say. But it might come that we have no choice for the games to be played behind closed doors.
There's no doubt that football will be forever affected, be it financially, the way fans watch the game, or the way players interact. Who knows? One thing is for sure though, the sport that offers hope to millions with each fixture will return. Maybe not anytime soon, but it will return and will once again capture the imagination of fans all over the globe who sorely miss the beautiful game. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
Sterling Moss, the British racing driver who ran